As we move beyond the vibrant rush of our younger years, stepping gracefully into the decades after 60, our bodies begin to tell new stories. Stories of wisdom, experience, and sometimes quiet struggles that few talk about. Among these often overlooked challenges is a condition that affects millions worldwide but rarely gets the attention it deserves: dry eyes. At first, it might seem insignificant, a subtle irritation, a fleeting dryness. But for many, this small discomfort grows into a constant companion. It's like a desert slowly creeping across the landscape of your eyes, leaving behind a trail of stinging, redness, and blurred vision. Tasks we once took for granted, reading a favorite book, enjoying a walk under the open sky, or simply meeting the gaze of a loved one, can become moments shadowed by discomfort and frustration. Imagine waking up to eyes that feel scratchy and heavy, or struggling to focus as your vision blurs, all because the natural moisture that once effortlessly protected your eyes is now in short supply. This condition, medically known as dry eye syndrome, is far more than an inconvenience. It's a silent struggle that chips away at the quality of life, independence, and even emotional well-being. But why does this happen? What causes the eyes, our precious windows to the world, to lose their natural hydration as we age? The answer lies deep within the intricate balance of our body's systems. The glands responsible for producing tears, those tiny but vital tears that lubricate and nourish, begin to slow down. Inflammation quietly takes hold, and external factors, like the very environment we live in, can intensify the dryness. Hormonal changes, medications, and lifestyle habits add layers to this complex puzzle. Yet, amid this complexity, there is hope. The human body is an incredible vessel of healing, especially when we listen closely and nourish it with care. What if the secret to softer, more comfortable eyes isn't locked away in bottles of artificial tears or prescription drugs? What if nature, through the foods we eat, holds powerful answers? In this exploration, we'll discover 5 extraordinary foods that have the potential to restore moisture and improve eye health naturally. These foods are not just nutrients. They are healing allies, rich in compounds that soothe inflammation, boost tear production, and protect the delicate tissues of the eye. More than that, they symbolize a holistic approach to aging gracefully, honoring the body, mind, and spirit in one harmonious act. Throughout this journey, we'll weave together the latest scientific insights with the wisdom passed down through generations. You'll hear stories of individuals who reclaimed clarity and comfort through simple changes in their diet. And beyond the biology and nutrition, we'll reflect on the profound meaning of caring for our eyes, the gateways to how we experience the world, connect with others, and perceive the beauty in every fleeting moment. Because in the end, nurturing our eyes after 60 is more than a physical act. It is a declaration of love toward ourselves, a quiet vow to embrace the years ahead with dignity, grace, and a clear vision, not just of the world outside, but of the rich inner landscapes of our eyes are marvels of biology, delicate, complex, and remarkably resilient. Yet, as the years advance, even these wonders begin to show signs of wear. Understanding why dry eyes become so common after 60 means diving deep into the science behind our tear production and the subtle changes that aging brings. Tears are much more than just salty water. They are a sophisticated blend of oils, water, mucus, and proteins working in harmony to keep the eye's surface smooth, clear, and healthy. This tear film protects us from irritants, fights infection, and nourishes the cornea, the transparent front part of the eye. When this delicate balance falters, the result is dry eye syndrome, a condition marked by insufficient or poor quality tears. Aging affects the tiny glands that produce each component of our tears. The lacrimal glands, responsible for the watery portion, often produce less fluid as we grow older. Meibomian glands, located along the eyelid edges, secrete essential oils that prevent tears from evaporating too quickly. When these oils thin or decrease, tears dry up faster, leaving eyes feeling raw and gritty. But it's not just age. Chronic inflammation plays a crucial role, quietly disrupting tear production and damaging the surface of the eye. Many seniors experience a low-grade inflammation around their eyes, a silent thief stealing away moisture and comfort. Moreover, certain medications, commonly prescribed in older adults for blood pressure, allergies, or depression, can unintentionally reduce tear secretion or alter the tear film's quality. Hormonal shifts after menopause or with advancing age also influence tear production. Estrogen and androgen levels impact the health of the glands, and when these fluctuate, the eyes pay the price. Environmental factors, like dry air, wind, and prolonged screen time, compound these internal changes, making symptoms even more challenging to manage. The impact of dry eyes reaches far beyond mere discomfort. Blurred vision can affect balance and mobility, increasing fall risk. Chronic irritation may lead to eye infections or damage the corneal surface. Emotionally, the constant discomfort can wear down patience and diminish the simple pleasures of daily life. Yet, knowing the science behind dry eyes equips us with power. It reveals why some treatments work and others don't. It guides us toward solutions that go beyond symptom relief to true restoration. Understanding the delicate machinery of tear production and the factors that disrupt it is the first step toward reclaiming eye comfort and clarity. It reminds us that aging, while inevitable, doesn't have to mean surrendering our connection to the world through clear, moist, and vibrant eyes. The body may change, but with knowledge and care, we can support it, nourishing those tiny glands, soothing inflammation, and rebuilding the moisture that once seemed to flow effortlessly. This understanding sets the stage for the next chapter, where we will explore the powerful role nutrition plays in supporting and restoring eye health naturally. Because what we feed our bodies can profoundly influence what our bodies are temples of intricate design, where every cell depends on nourishment to function, repair, and thrive. This is especially true for our eyes, delicate organs that require a precise blend of nutrients to maintain their moisture, protect against damage, and support vision clarity. As we age, the foods we choose become silent allies or hidden saboteurs in our quest to preserve eye health. Think of nutrition as the foundation on which the strength of our eyes is built. Without the right vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, the tiny glands that produce our tears falter, inflammation can flare, and the natural protective barriers weaken. On the other hand, a nutrient-rich diet fuels regeneration, calms irritation, and replenishes the vital fluids that keep our eyes moist and comfortable. Scientific studies increasingly reveal how certain nutrients specifically target the causes of dry eye syndrome. Omega-3 fatty acids, for example, are known for their remarkable anti-inflammatory properties. These healthy fats help rejuvenate the meibomian glands, improving the oil layer of the tear film and reducing evaporation. Without enough omega-3s, the eyes become vulnerable to dryness and irritation. Antioxidants such as vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene combat oxidative stress, a natural byproduct of aging and environmental exposure that damages eye cells and impairs tear production. Lutein and zeaxanthin, often called the eye vitamins, accumulate in the retina and lens, shielding them from harmful blue light and oxidative harm. Their presence is vital for maintaining visual acuity and preventing further deterioration. Zinc, a trace mineral often overlooked, plays a key role in transporting vitamin A from the liver to the retina, essential for clear vision and healthy tear production. A deficiency here can lead to night blindness and exacerbate dry eye symptoms. What we consume daily isn't just fuel, it's a direct conversation with our eyes. It tells them to heal, to protect, to produce moisture, or, if neglected, to wither and dry out. This makes nutrition one of the most powerful and often overlooked tools in the fight against dry eyes. Yet, the modern diet, frequently high in processed foods and low in fresh produce and healthy fats, often fails to deliver these crucial nutrients. For seniors especially, ensuring a diet rich in the right foods can mean the difference between suffering in silence and reclaiming comfort and clarity. In the chapters ahead, we will dive into 5 specific foods, natural, accessible, and packed with the nutrients your eyes desperately need. These foods aren't just remedies. They are daily acts of kindness towards yourself, small but profound steps to restore moisture, calm inflammation, and invigorate your vision. Because caring for your eyes through nutrition is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong commitment to see. Imagine your eyes as delicate gardens, requiring just the right balance of nutrients to flourish. Among the most powerful gardeners in this landscape are omega-3 fatty acids, natural anti-inflammatory warriors found abundantly in fatty fish. These remarkable fats are not just nutrients. They are lifelines for aging eyes struggling to stay moist and comfortable. As we age, the tiny meibomian glands along our eyelids often become sluggish or blocked, leading to a thinning of the oily layer that seals in moisture. Without this protective oil, tears evaporate too quickly, leaving eyes dry, irritated, and vulnerable. Omega-3s step in here like skilled healers, calming inflammation and helping restore the glands' function so the tear film can do its vital work. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, and anchovies are rich reservoirs of these essential fats. Studies consistently show that seniors who consume fatty fish regularly report fewer symptoms of dry eyes and experience better tear quality. This is not coincidence. It's the direct effect of omega-3s reducing inflammation on the eye surface and improving the stability of the tear film. But omega-3s don't stop at the surface. Their benefits extend deep into the body's immune system, regulating the inflammatory processes that often spiral out of control in aging tissues. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the silent culprits behind many age-related conditions, including dry eye syndrome, and omega-3s help to quiet this internal storm. For those who find it difficult to enjoy fish daily, high-quality fish oil supplements can be a valuable alternative. However, it's important to choose supplements carefully to avoid contaminants and ensure maximum potency. Incorporating omega-3 rich foods or supplements isn't just about fighting dryness. It's about nourishing the entire ocular ecosystem, from the tear glands to the retina. This warrior nutrient is also deeply connected to heart and brain health, underscoring the beautiful interconnectedness of our body's systems. When you feed your eyes omega-3s, you are simultaneously protecting your mind and your heart, a holistic approach to aging well. In embracing fatty fish and omega-3s, you're inviting a natural, powerful ally into your daily routine. This simple yet profound dietary choice becomes a declaration that you are committed to nourishing your eyes, calming inflammation, and preserving your vision's clarity and comfort. Next, we will explore another nutrient-packed food that has long been celebrated for its protective powers, one that colors your plate as vividly as it protects your eyes. Stay with me, because the journey to restoring your eye health naturally is only getting richer. The path to restoring moisture and vitality to aging eyes is paved with vibrant, nutrient-dense foods that may already be within reach, quietly waiting to unleash their healing power. Among these are the greens, nuts, citrus fruits, and eggs, each a unique weapon in the nutritional arsenal against dry eyes. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, and collard greens are treasure troves of lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 carotenoids that act as natural sunglasses for your eyes. Nestled deep in the retina, these antioxidants filter harmful blue light and combat oxidative damage, shielding your vision from the relentless onslaught of environmental stressors. Beyond protection, they help maintain the clarity and sharpness of your sight, supporting tear gland health and reducing inflammation. Nuts, such as almonds and walnuts, pack a punch of vitamin E, another potent antioxidant that safeguards cell membranes within the eye. This nutrient is crucial in neutralizing free radicals that damage delicate eye tissues. Moreover, nuts offer a healthy dose of essential fatty acids that complement omega-3s, working synergistically to keep your tear film robust and your eyes comfortable. Citrus fruits, think oranges, grapefruits, and lemons, burst with vitamin C, a powerhouse nutrient that strengthens blood vessels and supports collagen production in the cornea. Collagen is the eye's natural scaffolding, maintaining its structure and resilience. A deficiency in vitamin C can weaken this framework, leading to dryness and discomfort. Eggs, often overlooked, are a concentrated source of lutein and zeaxanthin, as well as zinc, vital nutrients for eye health. Zinc plays a crucial role in delivering vitamin A from the liver to the retina, ensuring the production of melanin, a protective pigment in the eyes. Regular consumption of eggs can help replenish these essential nutrients, reinforcing your eyes' defenses against dryness and age-related degeneration. Together, these foods form a dynamic team, each bringing a unique set of nutrients that work in harmony to hydrate, protect, and nourish your eyes. They aren't just ingredients on a plate. They are allies in a lifelong commitment to seeing the world clearly, comfortably, and vibrantly. As you embrace this nutritional arsenal, remember that true healing comes from consistency, a daily ritual of choosing foods that honor and support your eyes. This is not just about fighting dryness. It's about reclaiming a deeper connection to your senses and the life they reveal. Next, we will uncover how hydration and lifestyle habits intertwine with nutrition to complete the circle of eye health. Because restoring moisture to your eyes requires more than just food, it demands a holistic approach, blending nourishment with mindful living. Restoring and maintaining the moisture in your eyes is not solely a matter of what you eat. It's a symphony of daily habits, environmental awareness, and mindful self-care. The eyes, those windows to our souls, reflect the state of our entire well-being. To truly nurture them, we must embrace a holistic lifestyle that supports every facet of eye health. Start with hydration, often underestimated, yet profoundly essential. Water is the fundamental ingredient in tear production. Dehydration silently steals moisture not just from your skin, but from your eyes too. Sipping water consistently throughout the day ensures your body can produce tears that are both plentiful and rich in nutrients. Herbal teas and water-rich fruits like cucumbers and watermelon also contribute, gently infusing your system with hydration. Consider your environment. Prolonged exposure to dry air, whether from air conditioning, heating, or wind, accelerates tear evaporation. Simple steps like using a humidifier or wearing protective eyewear outdoors can dramatically reduce dryness. For many seniors, spending time in nature, breathing fresh air and basking in natural light, helps soothe irritation and restore a sense of calm to tired eyes. Screen time, another modern challenge, demands mindful management. Blue light emitted by phones, tablets, and computers strains the eyes and disrupts the natural tear film. Adopting the 20-20-20 rule, every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds, gives your eyes a necessary rest, reducing fatigue and dryness. Sleep is the ultimate healer. During deep sleep, your body replenishes tear production and repairs eye tissues. Seniors often face disrupted sleep cycles, which can exacerbate dry eye symptoms. Prioritizing restful sleep through calming routines, comfortable bedding, and limiting screen exposure before bedtime supports eye restoration overnight. Mindfulness and stress management, though less obvious, are equally crucial. Chronic stress triggers inflammatory responses that can worsen dry eye conditions. Practices such as meditation, gentle yoga, or simply spending quiet moments focusing on your breath help lower stress levels, calming the eyes and the body alike. Finally, regular eye checkups with your healthcare provider cannot be overstated. Early detection of underlying conditions such as blepharitis, glaucoma, or age-related macular degeneration ensures timely treatment and preserves your precious vision. In weaving these lifestyle habits with nourishing foods, you create a powerful, natural defense against the silent struggle of dry eyes. It's an ongoing dialogue between body and mind, a commitment to gentle care that honors the eye's vital role in your experience of the world. As we conclude this journey, remember that your eyes deserve your attention, not just in moments of discomfort, but every day. In the final chapter, we will reflect on the wisdom gained as the years gracefully unfold. So does a unique wisdom, one that teaches us to listen deeply to our bodies, honor the subtle signals they send, and embrace the natural rhythms of aging. Dry eyes after 60 are not merely a discomfort. They are a silent message from our bodies, inviting us to care for ourselves with intention, compassion, and knowledge. Through this journey, we've uncovered the profound connection between nutrition, lifestyle, and eye health, a triad of care that restores moisture, reduces inflammation, and nurtures vision from within. From the healing power of omega-3 rich fatty fish to the vibrant protection of greens, nuts, citrus, and eggs, each bite becomes a step toward clearer, more comfortable sight. And beyond food, the mindful choices we make, hydration, rest, stress management, compose the full symphony of holistic wellness. To embrace aging with nourished eyes is to reclaim your clarity, not only in vision but in life. It's a daily affirmation that despite the passage of time, your body holds the remarkable capacity to heal, adapt, and flourish. Your eyes, in turn, continue to open windows onto the beauty, the stories, and the wisdom the world offers. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to join our community by liking this video, sharing it with someone who might benefit, and subscribing to the channel for more insights dedicated to aging well and living fully. Together, we can empower ourselves and those we love.